It's 2 a.m., the lights are off, the house is silent, and out of nowhere, your brain decides this is the perfect moment to replay something you said 3 years ago. Nobody chose this. It just showed up, uninvited, and now it won't leave. Counting sheep doesn't work. Scrolling your phone doesn't work. Telling yourself it doesn't matter anymore doesn't work either. Somewhere in your skull, a switch got flipped, and you don't have the remote. But here's what almost nobody tells you, and it's the part that changes everything about how you'll see the rest of tonight. Later in this video, there's a single finding from brain scan research that explains exactly why you can't just decide to stop thinking, no matter how hard you try. Once you hear it, you'll never look at 2 a.m. the same way again. First, let's understand what's actually happening inside your head. Let's start with what we know for certain. In 1991, psychologist Susan Nolan-Huaxema published research at Stanford introducing something called response styles theory. She'd noticed a clear pattern in how people handled sadness and stress. Some people distracted themselves, took action, moved forward. Others sat with the feeling, replayed it, analyzed it from every possible angle, over and over, without ever landing on an actual answer. She called this second pattern rumination, and her research found something important. Rumination doesn't solve anything. It just keeps the emotional wound open longer, sometimes for days, sometimes for years. You already know this if you've ever lain awake at midnight, running the exact same argument through your head for the 40th time, arriving at the exact same unsatisfying conclusion every single time. So here's the real question. If overthinking doesn't help, if it never actually produces a solution, why does the brain keep doing it anyway? Why can't a person just decide to stop? The answer is buried inside a part of the brain most people have never heard of, and it's the piece I promised you earlier. In the early 2000s, neurologist Marcus Reichel at Washington University in St. Louis identified something unexpected while scanning brains at rest. Even when people weren't doing anything, weren't solving a problem, weren't focused on any task at all, one specific network of brain regions still lit up anyway, humming quietly in the background the entire time. He named it the default mode network. This network activates precisely when the mind isn't occupied by anything external. No task, no conversation, no distraction, pulling attention outward. And what does it do with all that free time? It turns inward. It reviews. It predicts. It worries. Which means the moment you stop actively focusing on something, your brain automatically defaults to exactly the kind of looping, self-referential thinking that keeps you staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. This isn't a malfunction. This is the factory setting quietly built into every human brain on the planet. And that raises an even bigger question. Why would evolution build a brain this way in the first place? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. For most of human history, worst-case scenario thinking wasn't a flaw. It was survival equipment, and it was often the difference between living and not living at all. Picture a hunter-gatherer hearing a rustle in the grass. The version of that person who immediately imagined a predator and prepared for it lived to see morning. The version who assumed it was probably nothing and relaxed instead sometimes didn't. Psychologist Roy Baumeister's widely cited 2001 paper, titled simply "Bad is Stronger Than Good," found that negative experiences consistently affect people more powerfully and get processed far more thoroughly than positive ones. Across nearly every area of psychology his team examined, the exact same pattern held true again and again. The brain isn't randomly pessimistic. It's specifically built to take threats seriously, replay them from every angle, and extract every possible lesson from them. Because for most of human history, missing a real threat could end a life on the spot with no second chances. The problem is that entire system was calibrated for a world of physical dangers, predators, starvation, conflict with a rival tribe, immediate, concrete threats a person could actually see, respond to, and do something about. Now take that exact ancient software, unchanged for hundreds of thousands of years, and run it inside a completely different world. Instead of processing a rustle in the grass, it's processing an awkward text message, a mistake made in front of coworkers, or a conversation that ended ended slightly wrong 3 years ago. There's no predator to fight, no danger to physically escape, just an endless loop with nowhere left to discharge itself, which is exactly why overthinking feels so exhausting and so pointless even while it's happening. The body is bracing for a threat that already passed years ago or was never physical at all, and yet every system fires the same way regardless. So if this system is ancient, automatic, and largely out of anyone's direct control, is there actually something that helps break the loop? Researchers studying rumination have found something that consistently works, and it's not what most people expect. It isn't forcing the mind to stop thinking, which almost never works and often backfires, making the thought louder and more persistent instead of quieter. What actually helps is giving the default mode network something else to occupy itself with entirely. Physical movement interrupts the loop almost immediately, shifting blood flow and attention away from the network doing the looping. So does deep focus on a task demanding enough that the brain genuinely can't multitask its way back into replaying old conversations. And writing thoughts down, instead of just replaying them internally on a loop, has been shown to reduce their intensity, because putting a thought into words forces the brain to process it differently than simply looping it silently in the dark, hour after hour. None of this fully switches the system off, and that's probably not even possible. Honestly, it's not something anyone would actually want, since this same network is also responsible for creativity, long-term planning, empathy, and imagining the future in the first place. The goal was never to delete this part of the brain entirely. It's learning to work with it, instead of getting quietly trapped inside it every single night. Understanding where overthinking actually comes from changes something important about how it feels to experience it. It stops being proof that something is wrong with a person specifically, and starts being proof of exactly how human they are. Every single person staring at the ceiling right now, replaying a conversation from years ago, is running the same ancient hardware that once kept their ancestors alive through countless dangerous nights. That said, if this kind of thinking feels constant, overwhelming, or like it's quietly taking over daily life in a way that makes it hard to function, that's genuinely worth talking through with a professional who can help someone work with it directly, not just understand where it comes from. But for most people, most of the time, overthinking isn't a malfunction at all. It's an old survival tool, still faithfully doing its job exactly as designed, just aimed at a world that stopped needing it centuries ago and never sent the memo. The next time you catch yourself spiraling at 2 a.m. over something that doesn't even matter anymore, try remembering this one thing. That's not weakness keeping you awake in the dark. That's roughly 300,000 years of evolution, refusing to let its guard down. Even now, even here, in a bed, in the dark, with absolutely nothing left to fight and nowhere left to run. If this changed how you think about your own overthinking tonight, hit subscribe, drop a like, and share this with someone who needs to hear it before they lie down tonight. And down in the comments, tell me this: what's the one thought that keeps coming back to you at 2 a.m. no matter how hard you try to let it go?